Greetings, fellow scribes! Welcome back to the archive. This week is the second in my series on Scion 2nd Edition. In this video, I will be discussing the Pantheons. This is more of a overview video, as a more detailed approach will probably be saved for a future in-depth series. This is going to be just a quick overview of the 10 Pantheons listed in the core book, just to give an idea of which ones they've put out and a little bit about them. So with that out of the way, I'd like you all to sit back, relax, and enjoy as I talk about Scion 2nd Edition. So before I begin, let me just give a quick reminder to everyone. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe down below. Leave comments. Tell me what you like, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see me talk about more of in the future. I'm always looking for ways to improve the channel. With all that said, let's just get right on into this, shall we? So, starting with the Pantheons, we're going to take a look at what was done in 1st edition. In 1st edition, they had 6 Pantheons in the core book. They had 3 in the Scion Companion, and 1 got printed as a small little pamphlet, a print-on-demand pamphlet. And that's how we started off. 2nd edition decided that they were going to change things up a little. First, they started with 10 Pantheons in the core book. They kept 5 from the original hero. The Theoi, the Greek and Roman religion, Pantheon. The Netcher, the Egyptian. The Teotl, the Aztec. The Aesir, the Viking / Norse / Scandinavian mythology. And the Kami, the Japanese mythology, the Japanese Pantheon. They then brought the 3 main Pantheons detailed in the Companion. The Tuatha De Danann, the Irish Pantheon. The Deva, the East Indian or Hindu Pantheon. And the Shen, the celestial bureaucracy of China. And then they created 2 new Pantheons for the book. Of course, they didn't actually create them. They brought in and adapted for the game these 2 other Pantheons. They dropped the Loa for their sister Pantheon from Africa, the Orisha. I suspect they're going to publish the Loa in a future book, because they do mention them and the Yazata several times throughout Hero and Origins. The other Pantheon they brought in was the Manitou of the Ojibwe people of North America, which is good. They now have a more diverse sampling of religions, of pantheons. They have something from everywhere. Now, another thing that they did really good is they spoke about the living, real-world religions that follow most of these pantheons. This is partly to give people an idea of how it's practiced by the people who are practicing that religion right now, and therefore the people who will be practicing it in game. And then, of course, they went into each pantheon and divided them into certain key mechanical elements. The skills associated with the individual religions, the individual pantheons. Like, for instance, the Orisha have medicine and subterfuge as two of the skills that any Scion from that pantheon is going to have. They also talk about the virtues of the different pantheons. Now, what the virtues are is they're the two poles of the religion, the conflicts, so to speak, that any Scion following goes back and forth upon. An example is the Orisha are tradition and innovation. So they're always back and forth between wanting to strictly adhere to tradition versus adapting and improvising new things and stepping away from that tradition. The core conflicts in any pantheon. Of course, they also talk about the signature purview of every pantheon. Now, everyone has knacks, and purviews are an additional thing. They're something that the heroes and above can do, where they're accessing divine power through relics or through their own inherent connection to their pantheon. And every Scion of a pantheon has access to the pantheon's signature purview. But talking about the completeness of the pantheons, they are fairly solidly handled. There are some deities that are missing, but a creative GM working with the players can fill in those gaps. There's one that's always a huge... Why do they keep forgetting this one deity with the Hindu pantheon, the Diva? They forgot Ushas, the goddess of the dawn. There's a lot of interesting symbology with her. I won't go into it, but it's if you wanted to be a Scion of her, the GM would have to work with you, hammer out little details. Now they have the Japanese Kami of the Dawn, so you'd probably look at her for a rough guideline. But that's just a little bit of possibility there. One thing that they did that I really found noticeable was with the Netjer, the Egyptian gods. They didn't use the Greek names. You see, we're used to thinking of the names of Horus, Sekhmet, Isis, Thoth, and all those. When, like, Thoth is actually Jehuti. Osiris is Wesir. Isis is Aset. That sort of thing. They put those details in. They changed some things in it. They went a lot more historically accurate. They did a lot more research for this edition. And speaking of doing a lot more research, when dealing with the diva, they did something I was very glad to see. For most of the diva entries, they open it with not a prayer per se, but very much something akin to an homage, a respectful showing to the deity that they're about to talk about. A great example is the opening of the Vishnu entry. Triumph, Vishnu, Lord of the world, the preserver of all things that live, have lived, and will live. That opening sentence is actually respectful to the deity, at least from a Hindu perspective. That if you're going to talk about a god, you want to open with praise to that deity, which was a huge, subtle difference from the previous edition. Now, some of their artwork actually portrays specific regions of India, or regionalizes where they were drawing from their inspiration. The example being, they show Kali with only 2 arms in her divine aspect. That's not all over India. That's only in a few specific regions. But that tells us where they're looking at for their inspiration, for their cultural idealization, for their artwork at the very least. But these little details really, to me, set apart their treating of the Pantheons from the previous edition. I look forward, in fact, to a in-depth look at the Pantheons in a future video, or in future videos. With that said, I think this is a good stopping point for this video. Next week, I will be talking a bit about the system for Scion 2nd Edition. So, until next week, I would just like you all to remember to have fun and keep gaming.